And addiction is very, very real here in Appalachia, and everybody here can tell you a story or 100 about addiction. We live in some of the oldest mountains in the world.
Stolen land, stolen again to create the extraction state.
We are real people talking about real things in a real way.
This is Appalachian Livin.
So we want to put a trigger warning on today's podcast and say that we're going to be talking about topics dealing with addiction and substance abuse.
It's going to be very hard conversations.
We're going to be using specific words, talking about specific activities. So if you find yourself in a position where these things might trigger you, we want you to stop listening.
Please don't. Please do not give us a listen, a follow, or a like if we trigger you in any way.
And also, please recognize that if you need help with your substance abuse or addiction issues, there are tons of resources out there. We are certainly happy to help you reach those and help them reach you. So take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and enjoy our podcast.
Okay, go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of Appalachian Livin podcast. My name is Elise.
And I'm Lindsay. Hello.
And we are so excited to be here today. It is a beautiful day.
It is.
Sun was out today. There was a warm breeze. We played in the creek a little bit before we sat down.
It was
today.
amazing. It was amazing. It's fine.
Spring is on its way.
It feels so good. It's almost 80. Let's see, 75 degrees.
75 degrees at 5 o'clock in the evening.
Yeah. So.
And today we're going to be talking about a very tough and tender issue.
Which I think is probably why we needed to go play in the creek for a little bit.
I would have to agree.
Yeah.
I think we both needed to kind of center ourselves because the topic of today's conversation is addiction.
Yep.
And this is an issue that if you live in, work in, travel through any part of Appalachia, then you are interacting with recovering addicts, possibly active addicts. Addiction is in every part of our life.
Yeah.
And I think we hear about it on the news, and the rest of the country hears about it when there are blips in the radar, maybe a bad bunch of drugs come in and we get a bunch of overdoses and we make a national news or something like that. But for us, it's a day-to-day experience. And not one person who lives here has been untouched by it.
No, they haven't. In some way or another, either they themselves have been addicted, family members, friends have been, died from it. And, when you go into any sort of addiction rehab, and we'll talk about that, they'll tell you there's only 3 places that you're going to end up in this. It's jail, institutions, or death.
So how old are you?
I'm 44.
You're 44, and I'm 44.
Yep. We were born in the same year.
We were born in the same year. I was born in April. You were born in December, right? So we are exactly the same age. We experienced this thing as teenagers in our late teens. We were 18, 19 years old when you can look at the data. The first round of overdose deaths happened as a result of the opioids.
I didn't even realize that was when it was. Mm-hmm. That's when I first just started hearing about it. Now, in the early 90s, we heard of now my parents always called them the druggies, and there were still like opioid. There was an old pill, I think it was called Tylox.
Yeah.
And I had to think about that. I had to go deep in my brain to pull that out. And so I knew of them, my parents would point them out, and I didn't want anything to do with it. But,
that time frame, though, that late 90s. It's
very significant because the first time I ever did one was in 1999.
Yes, ma'am. And I have shared this with you, and I will talk a little bit about the role I have in my community around this issue. We have something pulled up on the screen here that it was developed and patented in 1996.
That sounds
And
about
by
right.
1999, it was already taken out, the first wave of overdose deaths.
We had 160 milligram tablets. They became available in July of 2000.
So
160 milligram tablets that is a lot.
That's a lot.
If anybody knows anything about it, 160 milligrams.
It's deadly.
When you, we could put it into perspective, right? So when you go, Tylox was 5 milligrams of oxycodone, which is the same as a Percocet today. So when you go and have a major surgery, sometimes that's what they'll give you is a Percocet 5 milligram. They were making 160 milligrams.
And prescribing them for pain, not necessarily surgical pain.
Well, they were saying it's mostly for cancer patients.
Sure.
End of life, make them comfortable.
And we might delve into the statistics later about there were certain towns in West Virginia where millions and millions and millions and millions of these pills were pumped into, and if anybody had been paying attention, that would have been a huge red flag, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I have shared my story with you that I was grounded the week that OxyContin showed up.
That's something.
And I feel like that was such a blessing for me because I was right there with all my friends, partying with everybody else, being a normal teenager. And I missed its introduction. And by the time I, came back around, folks were really already addicted.
Yeah.
And they were different.
It's fast.
And it went very quickly from OxyContin, snorting it, to shooting it up, to heroin. It was literally like within a year.
It's a progression.
And so I, thankfully, have the perspective of having been outside looking in, and nearly everyone I graduated with, not every person, but many, became addicts, struggled with addiction. Many died.
Yeah.
I've lost many friends to the opioid epidemic, and I've also have amazing friends and stories of recovery.
Yeah.
And I am so grateful that you're willing to talk a little bit about your own recovery.
Thanks, because this is a very, very hard subject, and if my voice quivers, it will. It's going to.
And mine will quiver with you. How does that sound? Our voices will shake together.
It's an emotional thing because, like you said, we have lost people.
We have.
So with that, I will tell you how I was introduced to it. Like I said, I knew growing up, my parents would point out the druggies. We knew who they were. I didn't want to be like them. And I was hardcore against it, hardcore against it. Listen, if you would have told me as a 17-year-old, 18-year-old, what I would have been through, what I would go through, I would have been like, no, somebody must have forced you to do it. But I wasn't. And you could say peer pressure. I think peer pressure is a part of it. But it's also, you have to own up to your own bullshit, right? You have to own up to your own choices. Yeah, there's peer pressure. All your friends were doing it. But there's a line that you have to say, at what point is it your fault?
Can I just interrupt and say?
Absolutely.
There is peer pressure, and the boomers experienced it with alcohol and weed.
Cigarettes,
whatever drugs came around in the 70s.
And I wanted to say we need to talk about it, like
the difference in this drug.
And describe addiction.
We're going to talk deeply about addiction, but this drug was different.
Very different.
This is a time-release morphine derivative, correct?
I'm going to tell you the very first time I ever did one. It was I'd already graduated high school, but it was a high school football game. It was like I had just graduated, and we were at a high school football game. and there was no weed around. We were looking for weed. And there was no weed around. And a friend, someone from school was like, well, I got one of these. I don't even remember exactly what it was. I know it was an Oxycontin. I don't know if it was a 10, 20 or what it was. It was a 20. And I split it, and I remember the moment, because the Oxycontin, so when you say Oxycontin, Oxycontin, they don't make those anymore.
That's right.
They had a coating on them, right? And this is why we had this trigger warning in the beginning. They had a coating on them that you would put in your mouth, and you'd wipe it on your shirt. And if you saw the little stains on people's shirts, you could see the coating.
And this coating also damaged your teeth. This was a major issue with a lot of teeth issues. You'd see, among other things, was very damaging to the enamel on your teeth.
So you would get it wet, you'd wipe it off. Some people would just crush it, but then some people called it a chisel plow, and you would get one of those, and seeing them to this day can be a trigger. It can be a trigger. Not so much anymore, because, I haven't had an opiate that wasn't from my cancer surgery. During chemo, I will say, I had 0 narcotics.
Good for you.
But I guess maybe we should say I got addicted to opiates, right? And I've recovered. And
that moment when that happened,
when that taste and that it hits you instantly, because you chisel it up, the little, what do you call them? The little pipe clamps, right? They're metal, and they're
ring clamps,
and you put them, you bend them backwards, and they're like a little shaver, and you shave it, and it just makes it super fine. Okay. And then it melts in the back of your throat.
Got one pulled up there. Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. It's like a grater. And it's interesting, the tools that addicts get creative with in order to do this. And
I'll tell you a few more.
We don't have to, but I'm sure there are many.
And I don't want to give people ideas, but these are old. These are like 10 years old, and things are way different now.
Sure, of course.
But like, if you're trying to drive and you got a half a pill you need to do, put it in the straw, chew it, and then snort it right in the car while you're driving. Nobody ever know. But as soon as that hit me, I remember leaning back, and I said, I can see how people can get addicted to this. And I still did. It was years later. It took a while, because I was like, I'm not going to do that every day. But we were looking just to have a good time. I'd never liked alcohol. And I preferred weed, but you couldn't find any, because it was in the 99. So
there was no recreational marijuana in the 90s.
There was none, and no
there was
medical.
medical at the federal level, but you had to apply through a federal
the medical was the pain pills.
Right.
We would go to the doctor.
And I do want to say that I think that the entire opioid issue may deserve a deeper dive in terms of suppliers and links to West Virginia specifically and those types of things. But this episode, I kind of want to stay focused on kind of the personal aspect of it.
I think this is probably going to be a series, because I'm in contact with several people, because I have several people close to me that we went through active addiction at the same time, and we've all recovered.
Wow. Wow, congratulations and good work.
Yeah, and if there's 3 people that, if you were to look at us 15 years ago, you'd be like, which one of them is going to be dead in 10 years?
Right.
We're all here and thriving.
Wow. That says a lot about the fortitude of our people and where we come from. It says a lot about the constitution of our physical bodies.
We don't give up.
It says a lot about a lot of things that even the strongest of us, what you just described to me was a young woman who was very strong-minded, determined, was very clear-minded about a future, and you were in college.
Mm-hmm.
I think
I actually graduated high school. I worked the entire summer and I stayed with my parents. I didn't have to pay any bills. I paid for my gas and, my spending money, but they didn't make me pay any bills. They were like, if you're going to stay here, you're either going to work, go to college. And I did both until we moved away to Concord. But I just went to the local and I worked all summer and I went to the college and I paid cash for my first year.
you paid cash for your college tuition your first year.
Well, I had a scholarship too.
And so I think it's important to highlight that, because when you stand on the outside and look in, well, that doesn't seem like someone who would become an addict or who would become addicted to a substance. That seems like somebody who's really got their shit together. And you did. And you still, this particular drug has a chemical makeup that is particularly addictive. And I think it's really important that we talk openly about that, because it's not just like weed. No. It's not just like even cocaine or any other, naturally derived drug. This is a synthetic painkiller that mimics certain things in your brain. And so I have a lot of empathy and sympathy for folks who have struggled with addiction, because as you just heard, I was fortunate. I got a huge warning sign before I went there, but if I had
a warning sign
absolutely.
too, but that's the thing,
and
is that you heard that warning sign and you were
Yes.
like, oh no. I heard that warning sign and was like, I'm bored. I think I'm just going to do this, even though I was dead set against it.
And I will say
being
this,
a 19-year-old,
I was out of school. I was out of state at school too. I wasn't here local. So I think that was another layer of distance and kind of protection for me, because it wasn't a huge issue where I was. Here, particularly around the coal mining areas, it was, because that was the source.
everybody's dad's in the coal mines. Everybody's dad is hurt.
And then as an economic driver too, the money you could make from a script of Oxycontin,
Oh my goodness,
was incredible for around here. Like people selling
it was
their
$1
scripts.
a milligram.
So if you had 30 pills or 60 pills that were 160 milligrams, you're talking
$160. $160 a pill.
thousands of dollars per month
Yeah.
in a script.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact from my personal experience that there were men and women who got these legitimately through prescription and sold them.
Yeah.
It was a source of income. And because of HIPAA, it was hard to track, across databases and stuff, and there wasn't any real effort. The fact that in 3 years from when this drug was patented and released, you just gave me the look like your hands are flying around the table.
No, I did not.
Just knowing that, it was
I
only...
love it. I love talking with your hands. Love it. Sorry.
Just the 3 years between when they released it and then in 1999 was the first wave of deaths from overdose.
And that's when I tried it.
Right, and that's when
A
it came...
football game, so it was the fall of 99.
And it came to Hinton about the same time, Summers
Yeah,
County.
yeah.
So I think from that point, right, I stepped away and I started hearing from my friends as they struggled with recovery when they would get to the point where they would call and make amends. And I would hear from friends and they'd say, I'm sorry. And no one ever did anything. No one ever stole anything from me. Nobody who went through recovery ever personally did anything to me. But I fully supported their process. And I would tell people that, if you're really trying to get well, I'm here for you. I'm here for you.
The fact that that made me think of something that I never thought of before. But you just said that people would call you and make amends, and you did not feel personally attacked or
Not at all.
hurt by them or anything. Like,
But I accepted their apologies because it was for them.
did any of them have anything in particular that they knew, or was it they were just trying to do a generalized?
It felt like the conversations were, I'm in rehab now, and I just want to say I'm sorry for how I behaved and how I acted and the things I
Right.
did, right? But I never
Yeah.
held anything against anybody because it was terrifying to
Yeah.
watch.
Oh, for sure. But I think what that made me think of is that I've heard so many people say so many terrible things about addicts, and none of it compares to the things that you tell yourself.
Oh, that's a great point.
None of it. None of it. And so when when I got clean, I was told not to tell anybody that I had this problem.
It was a stigma.
When I was in active addiction and I was trying to get out, I went to the methadone clinic and I tried to do that for a few years. And, you know, I came clean to the closer people in my circle. And, I'm sorry, my brain just died because I see Ricky's.
That's okay.
But when where was I going?
Apologies during the process, the steps when you apologize, and so many people who judge themselves harder than other people. You were told not to let on that you had struggled with addiction.
I wasn't supposed to say that. And then so when we would get around people, and they would want to talk shit about people that are addicts, and I want to be like, you don't understand what they're telling themselves, you know, and they're like, they just need Jesus. And I'm like, they need more than that.
Absolutely.
Because you don't understand what the physical withdrawals feel like. And you will justify almost anything. And there are lines, every addict is different, right? Every addict is different. And I was different than a lot of them, because I would say I never stole money, but I would talk you out of your money.
You were a very gifted and smart, bright person.
I was. You know, I'm very, I can be very resourceful when I need to be. And I'm trying to use that for good now instead of evil. But I say any recovering addict, you need to let them run some shit. You need to let them problem solve, because those people can fix anything.
Wow, that's a really great point.
Yeah.
Figuring it out to get your high, you come up with all
Have
kinds
you
of
ever
creative
seen that
ideas.
meme? Was that me and you talking? There was
About
this meme
don't let a
that was like, "Don't let
crackhead
a
out-hustle you."
Yes, because a crackhead will figure out a way to get what they want.
So don't be out hustled by a crackhead today. Get up
Exactly.
and get moving, right?
Like, I did not want to talk about this. I didn't want to get up. We talked at 10 o'clock this morning. I'm like, you can just come whenever, okay? Later is good.
And I have been. If you had said you didn't want to do it, we wouldn't have had to do it. But I also think that it's hard for me to talk about it too.
It's a very touchy subject. Like I said, people didn't even want me to admit my problems, and it wasn't them. I was the one with the problem, but they felt like it reflected on them. And I only recently have figured out that
Nobody thought as harshly about you as you.
and nobody has the right to tell me what I can and cannot say about my story.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to say whatever I want. I'm going to. And nobody can tell me jack shit about my story, because my story is mine and nobody can take it from me.
Well, and 20 years ago, we were still trying to hide it and act like it wasn't happening because it was embarrassing, right? When your adult grown children couldn't feed themselves or bathe themselves or take care of themselves because they were constantly seeking this drug, and then their kids were being neglected. And
Grandparents raising grandkids.
that has only increased over the last 2.5 decades. And it's way past time to peel back that stigma and say that this had very little to do with the people who got involved with it. It had a whole lot more to do with the type of drug it was, how much of it they dumped into our communities, apologetically,
and how rewarded people got for selling them.
the kickbacks to doctors and different people.
Well, even the
pharmaceutical
people that,
companies.
the
actual street value.
yeah.
And absolutely.
Let me tell you a story about a person that passed of cancer in early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
And when they died, there was an entire coffee can full of 80 milligram Oxycontin. Because they gave them to terminally ill cancer patients like they were candy, They have 380s a day. They do some 20s in between that, but they didn't take them all, Of course, that would have killed them. And they got flushed down the toilet.
So he went right into the water supply system and all that.
They got flushed down the toilet.
I think it's important to mention folks need to learn how to dispose of medications properly, because
can we make a
note
note
for
that needs to be
resources.
a link that we need to add?
Disposition of any medication really, but particularly opioids.
And I know they do it certain times of the year. I remember seeing commercials on saying, hey, we're doing a prescription drop off and you take it to your drugstore. They usually do it a couple times a year.
And the VA, I think, has some prescription drop boxes there in regularly.
I'm sure if you take it to a doctor, they'd be like,
so
yeah, we'll take care of it for you.
I've been advised to take wet coffee grounds and put them in there and then put them in the trash so that they open up and dissolve and go into the coffee grounds, and then you can put them in solid waste as an option. I want to talk a little bit about the programs and the support that have come along as a result of this. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we have in West Virginia is the drug court. And the drug court is for people who are not criminals, but are addicts who commit crimes in order to support their addiction.
Right.
And they really need a supportive community. They need something to do. They need some supervision, accountability, and some resources on what's happening with their body and their brain, and how
they need
to
to try to understand it.
Absolutely. And I have been a part of that locally for several years, and I'm very proud of it. It's not something I sought out. I was voluntold. But when I got involved with it, it's very critical work. And when you hear an addict say, I needed somebody to believe in me, I needed something to do, and it saved my life. I didn't need to go to jail and be locked up with a bunch of criminals for 7
They don't do anything. They just learn
how to be better criminals and how to.
They come in. They go in with a bachelor's and come out with a master's.
Right. That's a great description. So alternative sentencing and alternative criminal justice programs are one aspect of it. What kind of personal support when you decide? Can you talk about when you decided to recover and to seek that path?
I did it by myself. I had to do a lot internally because, like I said, there was a stigma to it. And I wasn't, even after I recovered for a long time, I didn't feel like I could put that out there. And it was only until, and I remember the day that I decided to put it out there, it was during the pandemic.
Oh, really?
It was. And I was going through this phase of
being real
and making sure that people knew who I was. And I think a big reason why I want to do this story now, one, I said, our first podcasts are going to be what made us. And addiction is very, very real here in Appalachia, and everybody here can tell you a story or 100 about addiction.
Whether it's a family member, their own story, or how they've, been a part of it, or were they robbed, or, did something happen to them because of addiction? Absolutely. Every single person. Every single person.
Yeah. And it does not discriminate socioeconomic status. None of it. And I talked to my brother the other day, and my brother is a cop in Memphis.
Okay.
Well, he used to be. He's retired now. And he worked there from, the early 90s after he came back from the Gulf War, until he just retired years ago, last year. I don't know. But he was in Memphis for 20, 30 years. And he's told me stories like high profile judges, lawyers. I mean, you know, they take one hit of crack. They take one and they know it's over.
And some people are predisposed to addiction.
That's true too. And I think I think there is a genetic, because like we all of us and I think a lot of my whole family has, even the ones, sorry guys, even the ones that don't want to admit it, there's some sort of addiction, whether it's from alcohol, drugs, food, exercise, people, dieting, whatever it is.
Pick your addiction.
Pick your addiction. We need that dopamine.
Right.
And I don't know if it's a genetic thing, if it's a regional thing.
Or a combination of factors, because I know personally, we've discussed in our family the predisposition to alcoholism.
Yeah.
I've had a number of people, my ancestors, who decided late in life to stop drinking and lived into old age sober. But to have that on both sides for me is kind of a red flag, right? And I know that I really we've talked about this, I like alcohol, I like to drink. I'm not a big drinker because I'm grateful my husband doesn't drink. And I know this about myself, that I could just get in the habit. I am fortunate that I don't struggle with other addiction issues. I have vices, you know, I have things that I like to dopamine, in whatever.
Well, we all have it, whether it's like candy or
Exactly.
You know, we have
I am
our
addicted
things,
to sugar 1,000%.
and it all depends, like you said, this particular drug.
Right. This
was-
chemical compound that makes your brain do this certain thing. I do understand. I remember hearing it called lady killer because women metabolize it differently than men. I remember hearing studies about how women actually got addicted more quickly in some
did not know
instances.
that.
And we can check out the science and maybe post some links about it. But I do remember hearing about it because if you recall, when this was really in the height of the ravages on our community, I was out of state. I was in other places. So to clarify from the last podcast, I don't think it was clear that I went to law school in Texas.
Yeah.
And then from there went to New Orleans and then Colorado. But
You didn't come back here until
2011.
and I didn't even meet you until after I had gotten clean.
Exactly. So while this was all going on here and people were either dying or seeking recovery or continuing in their addiction, there are plenty of addicts who are still present in there are plenty of functioning addicts.
I was a functioning addict. I held down
Absolutely.
3 jobs.
You had to hustle.
Yeah.
You had to feed that addiction, right?
Heck yeah.
You
Plus
look
the
like,
bills.
Look like a monster from the outside. Look at her go. She's a machine. She's feeding that monkey on her back, right?
Yes, yes.
The life force that we put into that.
I weed eated in southern Florida with my father-in-law in the summer. And
Made a bunch of money.
you know,
Yeah. So when you made that decision and decided to do it yourself, how did that go?
not good. It took a long time. It took years, because you get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that's what people say. I got sick and tired of being sick and tired. I got sick and tired of waking up and the first thing I thought of was, how am I going to make myself feel better? You know, and the first few years of being clean, that's what drove me, was that I'm going to wake up in the morning and I'm going to feel amazing. I'm not going to have the shakes, the shits, the chills, the sweats. I'm not going to have none of it. I'm going to feel amazing.
So you're getting high on life, literally.
Oh, we were. And that's,
Yeah.
we started hiking, and it was like a high on life, high on nature. Like it was springtime. Whenever springtime, like I said, that, you know, when springtime hit, we were like, I want to see every day. I want to watch it slowly come alive, because I felt like I was slowly coming alive. And we had to come back here. We moved to Florida, and I think we thought Florida was going to help us, and it did, but not in the way that we thought. And I've been thinking about this concept of, you know, you get what you wish for, but not in the way that you wished for it. And what I got from Florida was what we wished for, but not in the way that I had wished for it. But it was sorely needed in order for us to be able to move forward and grow. And so that's where I hit rehab.
So do you think it was removing you from the space and the people and the places that made addiction easy and comfortable?
I thought that that's what it was going to do, but when you go to Southern Florida,
there's plenty of pills there too.
There's plenty of drug addicts there.
Right.
And a drug addict is going to find a drug addict, you know? So, yes, you do need to get away from those people, places, and things because they're triggers, you know, the same people, but if you go straight to the same kinds of people, you're not going to change anything.
Right. Nothing's
going to change. And it, you know, it takes you having to hit rock bottom, and you got to figure out where your bottom is. And I think our bottom was when we just couldn't make it anymore. We didn't have a support. I found out that I had already done a 30-day rehab, and that taught me a lot, but I had to have a surgery. I had gallbladder taken out.
Wow.
Let's see.
So you relapsed after a surgery?
Yeah, I was kind of relapsing before that.
Okay.
You know, I'm going to be very, very
But then they
clear.
gave it to you with his
prescription. But then I, you know, took too many, and I ran out, you know, before I was supposed to.
So I had this birth defect that skips generations in my family, and my grandfather had it. My sister and I both have it. My mom didn't. But it required a back surgery at the base of my spine. And I don't know if you've ever fallen and bruised your tailbone, but that's basically what it felt like. Like something was just wrong with my tailbone, and I thought I'd bumped it on something. Well, I had a cyst at the base of my spine, and it ruptured. And like an appendix, it went into my bloodstream and made me very sick.
Oh, my goodness.
So my freshman year of college, and I have a comment to make about what the surgeon said as well. Anyway, I had to have this back surgery, and I have this large incision scar. It's probably 6 or 8 inches on my back. Major surgery. They gave me Tylox. 30 Tylox, which I needed because I just had
back surgery's
my
rough.
back sliced open and scraped on, right?
Yeah.
The first night I was home, I got a phone call from somebody asking if I'd got any pain meds.
Yeah.
This was in
Well, I wanted to know if you wanted to sell any of your
early
pills.
2000.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. But what I also want to point out about that interaction with that doctor was when you grow up in southern West Virginia, I can only speak to southern West Virginia. I won't say this for all of Appalachia, but I can imagine it exists everywhere. In our generation, the joke about being a stripper wasn't really a joke.
No.
If you were a young woman, at some point somebody made a comment about you going on the pole.
Oh, yeah. Joked about it all the time.
The orthopedics or the doctor, whoever the surgeon was who did my back surgery, told me to just wear a G-string when I was on the pole. Nobody would see the scar. I was 19 years old. I was a freshman at Virginia Tech.
Thanks, Doc.
And this is and he was joking, right?
Did you hear something?
So I'm curious to know if you could talk to how old were you when you started?
18.
18.
Well, I mean, that was the first time that I had done anything. Now, I didn't feel addicted, like physically addicted. I remember the moment. And it was, I woke up and I was not feeling well. And when I found myself in front of the dealer's house first thing in the morning, because I wasn't feeling well, I was like, shit.
Am I that person?
Yeah. And I knew it. And instead of, just being strong and working through that sickness, I just kept trying to push it down. And that's what addicts do. They just try to keep a sickness away. And a lot of people, when you go into a rehab or you go into some sort of program, And I guess when they say institutions, they mean that you go into like a program and you get recovery, right? Jail,
Right.
institution, recovery, or death. Because I was confused earlier.
That's okay.
So, when you go into a 30-day recovery, I was going to say something about what they tell you. Totally forgot what it was.
That's
What were we
okay.
talking about?
Oh, you were just explaining that, when you felt addicted versus when you started using. And I think that that's kind of an interesting, I want to talk about that a little bit because
It was years.
that's really an interesting take on it, because I think a lot of people who've never been around addicts or struggled may think that, yeah, the first time you do it, you're hooked.
Not every time,
Right.
and it's a progression. You have to do it probably, a few days. They tried to say like 7 to 10 days, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But I know when I had my hysterectomy a few years ago, and they gave me Percocet, and I didn't take it. I only took it, when I was really in pain, and I had one for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt myself starting to feel that physical addiction. And I would cut it in half so I wouldn't feel it, because that's a trigger. Because, I was taking it because I was in pain. And I don't know, they gave me maybe 10. But by the 7th one, I felt the chills, the queasy stomach, and I'm like, no, ma'am. Don't you go there.
Did you have a tough detox time when you did decide to get clean?
I detoxed off of methadone
Okay.
at the 30-day rehab. I could not do that myself. Detoxing off of methadone is one of the hardest things you'll ever detox from. It won't kill you. You can die from detox of alcohol, or benzos, which is like Valium, Xanax.
Mm-hmm.
You can die from the detox of that. So you can't, if you're physically addicted to either one of those, you need to see a professional, and you shouldn't do it yourself.
Okay.
Methadone, you'll want to die. You wish you were dead, but you won't die.
Did
And it
you-
takes a long, long time before you feel better.
Did you ever come close to an overdose?
Yes.
Really?
And it wasn't because it was because I would mix. So there at the end, there was a few times I was mixing alcohol there at the end, and benzos, which is a very, very dangerous. Mixing anything is dangerous, but when you put the benzos and the alcohol in there, it's very dangerous. And I was on vodka,
Oh wow. We
lemon
talked about that
lemon
earlier.
drops.
Tastes good, but
But
it's not
now
good
if
for
I
you.
smell or taste vodka, that's what it reminds me of. And
Gotcha.
it's disgusting, and I can't take it. And there's a recipe that I'm trying to make for my mom that has bourbon in it, and I can't bring myself to buy it.
Do it.
And I had a problem with alcohol even after I got off the pills, because, I'm off the physical addiction, but I'm still trying to work through I'm still an addict. I'm still an addict. I get addicted to things. It's just, what do I get addicted to? What do I put my energy into? And it's a choice. I could choose to put my energy into go finding pills now, which it's a lot harder now. And I don't even know. I think it's meth now. I don't know. I really don't know. I'm not up to speed on the drug stuff. I was looking around. I was asking a bunch of people about the resources that we do have around here. And they're very, very thin. There's really not a lot of resources. The ones that were in Welch they were flooded. And so they're in the middle of moving right now, and they can't really help a whole lot of people, but they do what they can. So if you do have problems with addiction, you're not alone. For one, there's nothing wrong with you. For two, and you are strong enough to get out of it. For three.
That's right. Sure.
I know there's a place in Oceana called One Voice, and they don't help people detox, but they do help people kind of integrate back into the community. Or, anybody that's struggling with addiction to, they help the community.
And I know some of these folks provide resources like Narcan.
They do. And I
locally.
have people, I had somebody message me that is, I think she's up north, and she's like, hey, do you guys need any Narcan down that way? And I messaged a few people that I knew worked with addicts. And they're like, we have a good stock right now.
But it's good to know it's out there. Narcan,
Exactly.
I didn't understand how Narcan worked. And I talked to one of my friends who's a doctor who's worked with addiction and recovery for many years. And he explained to me that when the drugs go into your brain receptors and do what they're doing in your brain receptors, Narcan, and this is a very, very simplified description, right? But Narcan basically pushes them out and takes that place in your brain.
blocks
So
it.
you go from being in overdose to being not high at all in a second. And as a result,
You're in detox.
you often vacate your bowels and your stomach and your bladder, and you come out in a rage.
You're in full detox.
And you are in the full throes of detox in that instant, right? And it was really eye-opening to me. And also the folks who are willing to put themselves in that position to save that person's life,
Yeah.
you're making yourself vulnerable too, because this is a lot of things are going to happen there that might be unpredictable, right?
Yeah.
So I have so much love for the people who care so deeply for the addiction community and for the recovering community and for every layer of
They're
that.
people too.
These are people who, but for the grace of God, go I, right? That's how I feel about it, is my story isn't an addiction story. My story is one as a witness to see how and what and where.
Yeah.
And I'm beyond grateful for that, because my life is what it is because I didn't have those struggles. But the people who have are no different than any of us.
No.
The people who are choosing to help them and finding these resources, thank you. And thank you for all of the amazing things you're doing.
A lot of times they are recovering addicts themselves
Good point.
because they're the ones that know
Yes.
what it's like, and nobody else in the community wants to help them, because if you have not experienced that, you don't understand it. And that's not the only thing in my life where I am like that. I'm like, if you haven't experienced what I have experienced, then you have absolutely no clue where I'm coming from. And that's why I think that these podcasts are so important in the beginning, is because if we do some subject where we have an opinion on and someone might not like, well, you probably should go listen to the beginning of the podcast and try to understand where we're coming from.
Right. And I think establishing our foundation.
Exactly.
And where we come from and
who we
how
are.
we were formed. I
Yeah.
loved that you were like, let's make these first couple
How
podcasts.
we were formed. What formed us.
What formed us? How did we become as fabulous as we
Yeah.
are today, right?
And then we did the one with Larry last
Yes,
time.
which
And he
was-
definitely formed you, who was forming me and still forming Southern West Virginia.
Absolutely. And then addiction is such an important part of that story, because my life would have been very different. I would have had different friend sets. I would have had different experiences growing up if my friends hadn't become addicts. Right? So I watched young women who were attendants at weddings cover up their track marks with makeup in the dressing room before they put their gowns on to go out.
Yeah.
How many people in America can say that? A lot of us in Appalachia probably can.
I am so thankful that needles make me want to pass out.
I am thankful that I had early influences in my life, I will say, who had experience with heroin in the 70s.
No.
And so as soon as I was old enough to understand the words, needles were the demon. Like, needles were, no matter what you do, don't ever, 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 ever do that.
Yeah.
So open conversations really, and I don't know if that was the right way to do it. It worked for me. It created that thing that was like, don't ever do that thing. That thing will kill you.
Right.
Right. But this drug came on
It
different,
doesn't matter.
right?
We knew.
Right. This drug
I knew
came on
that
different.
was going to kill
right?
me.
Of course. And this drug came on as a pill.
Yeah.
And so then
it's prescribed by doctors. And so in our, I think,
psyche.
that's the word I was thinking of.
Yes.
In our psyche, we feel comfortable with it.
Absolutely.
We're like, oh, that's okay. If we would have just had some weed, I probably would have never tried it. Now, who's to say that when I went on to college, I wouldn't have tried it? Because when I did go to college, I was out to try everything.
Sure.
And there are some things that I didn't try, but
But I do want to point out, and I don't want to dig into this right now because I think the whole kind of the policy aspect deserves an entire episode, right? With people much smarter than me on those topics.
Absolutely.
But I think that it's important to note in the early days of recreational marijuana and medicinal marijuana in states like Oregon and Colorado and early states that worked on this, a reduction in opioid deaths and overdoses was one of the immediate and first consequences of those policies.
It really helps with the detox symptoms. Mm-hmm. So it will,
And sometimes many of the underlying things that drive the need for the opioids, right?
Exactly.
So I think that I think there are many conversations that need to be had. I'm going to stop us here.
It's a very large topic.
I just want to say that you did really great today. That you shared your story with just enough of everything, and I hope you feel comfortable with what you said here today because
I do, and I feel like there's more that I need to say.
I'm really glad to hear that because I think there's more that people want to hear, and I certainly want to hear more because there are young women and men, and maybe not so young, maybe men and women our age, who, if you're still struggling, we see you, and
it's okay.
If you want to share your story and talk about your very personal journey with addiction, we'll give you the space to do that.
Absolutely, yes.
If you feel like there are things that we got wrong or that we misstated, let us know because, again, this is not my journey. Mm-hmm. I stand as a witness to this process, and I want to honor it, and I don't want to honor drug abuse. I don't want to honor any of the things that bring negativity to our community. But I want to honor the fact that our community was ravaged by something that nobody knew was coming.
Yeah.
And we will pay for generations. So I feel emboldened to say this and to provide this platform for people who have things to say about it.
I love it. I love that we have this space. And like I said, we've built this space to start a conversation.
Yes.
We're not finishing it. We're just starting it. And there's so much more to say.
Because we haven't heard it yet.
We haven't. It's not over.
Nope.
It's not over.
This is the beginning of the evolution of us as a community beyond these things, right? And to hell with everybody else. We're gonna get together and talk about it. So
yeah, because it needs to be talked about. Because I think the things that I hear people say about addicts really bother me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it really does bother me. And it's not because I was one, because you can say whatever you want about me. I don't care what you say about me.
But it's a perception that somebody wakes up one day and decides that they want to do that.
Yeah.
That's what I take
nobody
from
does
it.
that.
Nobody decides that they want to be an addict.
No, they wake up and realize that they already are.
And they will get sick if they don't.
Yeah. And then they just don't know how to get out of it.
Right.
And I remember so many times you asked me a question about if I came close to an overdose, and my husband came home and couldn't wake me up on the recliner.
Terrifying.
It is. And there were just a lot of things that I was trying to cover up, my feelings, my emotions, my worries.
And I want to mention ADHD too, because I think as we've grown up and as we've learned more. I did get
diagnosed with ADHD last year.
And when you don't know that about yourself growing up and you don't understand why your mind is as crazy as it is sometimes.
I thought there was something really wrong with me.
Right. And so there's a lack of real honest assessment in our young people and a real honest conversation about mental health because of the stigmas attached to it. If you
I
can't
always
pray it away
heard-
around here, then it ain't really a thing.
Yeah.
So we'll unpack that maybe in an old episode.
That's a whole other episode by itself. But there's a whole lot left to say, but I think this is a good spot to stop. And we're going to put some resources out there. I know the only place that we have right now really is like our social media apps and this right here, but I will be working on a website that will have like everything in it.
You can get a hold of us though. And if you have resources and want to provide things.
Yes, thank you, because I still have some notes that I'm not even really using. So if you have if we did not put a resource out there that we said we were going to, because, dude, come on, I'm tired.
Life is busy.
Life is crazy, and I hit post.
This is
forget.
our side hustle, by the way, right? Like,
and this is actually just our side hobby
at the moment.
And if you want to get a hold of us and you want to, either if you have a topic you want to talk to us, if you have a resource that you want us to get out there, our email is wvappalachianliving@gmail.com.
That's right. Appalachian
Livin
at gmail.com.
@gmail.com.
Thank you so much, Lindsay.
I'll try to put that up there, and if I don't, just message me.
How do you feel about what you said today? Do you feel good about it?
I do, and I don't even remember everything that I said.
It was brilliant and beautiful, and I'm so grateful that you shared yourself with us, and I'm looking forward to what comes from this conversation, because I think
me too.
Opening this door, I know it's right because it feels tough.
It has me keeping I've been holding my breath this whole time, and I do that when I'm nervous.
And I think the older we get, the more we learn that that's a sign that there's stuff inside that needs to come out.
Yeah.
And I feel like that about our community too. Like, there are things that people are holding back that are keeping us from being the best versions of ourselves.
I'm done holding myself back to make other people happy. And I know that there are several people within my life that are, probably upset with me. But it is what it is.
It is what it is. Well,
I'm living life for me.
Thank you for joining us for our third episode of Appalachian Livin. We are looking forward to episode 4.
Yeah. What are we going to do now? We're going to go play with rocks. So it might be about rocks.
And I do want to say that anybody that didn't play in the creek, if you grew up in Appalachia or the mountains and you didn't play in the creek, I'm not entirely sure I trust you. And you may be Appalachian.
Ooh.
Sorry.
That was a burn and a half.
So with that, see you next time.
Let's go play with some rocks.
Stay tuned, y'all. Appalachian Livin is sponsored in part by Wade Law Firm PLLC, Sage Stitch Finance Corporation, representing wisdom and mending what we already have, providing gap funds for resilient renovations.
Appalachian Livin is also brought to you by Hope Money Coaching, rescuing you from financial chaos and leading you to a path of financial wellness. Minimalist Gym, helping men and women navigate their health and fitness without restrictive fad diets.